Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our event. It's nice to see all of you. So we titled it Creating the 2022 That You Want Rather Than the One You're Settling For. We'll be with you for about an hour and 15 minutes. And even though you have a workbook there that we've provided for you, I'm going to cover 4 main components of what I think is good for you to be aware of as you start to create the year ahead. My name is Noelle. I am the CEO of Delta Hire, which is a staffing and recruiting company as well as a training and workforce development company. So we are moving across the country under my brand, which is Revealing Leaders, and we are doing free events on leadership and mindset and personal development and things of that nature. So, thank you. So when you think about creating the life that you want versus the one that you're settling for. And for those of you that don't know, I do a live Facebook show every Saturday morning at 8:30 off of a Facebook page called The Working Warrior Mom, which is another one of my brands. And we have a following of about 1.5 million people, and we have exposure of about 42 million people a month for the brand itself. So you may know that, you may not know that, but you're always welcome to watch the show every Saturday morning, which I was even live this morning from the hotel here in Portsmouth. So a lot of what we talk about there is mindset and how to create the life that you want and how to police your thoughts, how to restructure your thoughts, how to recreate yourself, how to move forward into a future that you are creating rather than what was your past or what you're settling for. A lot of us just sort of take what we can get and we look at what's happening and we say, okay, this is as good as it's going to get, or we're not sure how it's going to get any better, and we don't really know how to move forward. And that's part of what we're going to talk about today. So in order for you to get from where you are to where you want to go, you first have to realize, where do you want to go? And this is a question I feel like gets lost a lot. What do you want? If you had a clean slate, a clean book, if you had a whiteboard in front of you and you could write anything that you wanted for 2022, what would you put on there? What do you want? And I think as parents and in relationships and as business people, we lose sight of that. How often do you actually stop and say, what do I want? You're moving, you're doing a million things. Do you have periodic stops where you're saying to yourself, what do I want? What do I want to create here? What do I want the next month to look like? What do I want the next year to look like? And at the end of every year and the beginning of every new year, everyone goes, what are your goals? Write them down. Like, I'm going to stop smoking. I'm going to stop drinking. Okay, that's all fine and good. But it's really, do you just go into that rote mindset of like, okay, what are traditional New Year goals? I want to lose 10 pounds. I want to stop smoking. I want to be nicer to my husband or wife. I want to spend more time with my kids. I mean, there are I feel like stagnant things that we might say to ourselves for what we might want for the future. So I'm encouraging you first to think about, what do you really want? If I said to you, Jamie, you can have whatever you want for 2022, like what would that look like? What would Jamie write down? If there were no limitations on it and you could create whatever you wanted, and it wouldn't matter how much money you had or how much exposure you had or how many friends you had or how many businesses you have or how many jobs you have, what would that look like for you? Because I have news. If you can't even answer that question, if you can't language that, there's no way that you can create that. There's no way that's going to happen. So as much as you think I want to be a millionaire or I want to open my own business, or if you can't sit there and answer this question for me, and it's not a question to be answered in 5 minutes. This is a question when I will often say to people, you need to live in that question. And this is one of those questions that you need to live in that. Maybe get a notebook or a whiteboard and write on it, what do I want? And then as you go through the weeks ahead, that question will answer itself. And it may show you some things you didn't know. When I first began to ask myself this question, and I started interacting with my audience about 2 years ago on this question, when I started things came up that I didn't expect. And they didn't come right away. They came from walking by the question on the board, days, weeks, and saying, oh, if I could do anything, I would have that, I would have that, I would have that. And honestly, out of asking that question is how Revealing Leaders was born out of what used to be the Working Single Mom brand and morphed into Revealing Leaders. Because I realized that what I've been trained for my whole life since I was 12 years old is to train leaders, and that that's really my job. And although I'm the CEO of Delta Hire, which I love, and the director of project management for a large law firm in Miami, which I also love, my real job is to have you all understand that possibility exists for you, and for you to all lead yourself into your own lives the way that you want to see them, not the way that they might look right now, or not what you're settling for. And so when you ask yourself a question called, what do I want? You may be surprised at what the answer turns out to be. Once you start to answer that question, then you're going to need some kind of a plan to get yourself from here to there. And so first, what we have to look at is what's in your way. And this is my second and most important point of the day. You all look at reality and you think that it's reality. You think it's real. You look out around you. You see what's happening in your life. You see what's happening in your relationships. You see the circumstances. You see what you think are your failures. You see what you think are your obstacles. You look at all of this and you say to yourself, this is my reality. And I have news for you, that's incorrect. What that is that's your interpretation of what's happening. Your reality is simply your interpretation of what's happened, what's happening. And most of the time, unless you're very aware and you're really working with this concept, your reality is your interpretation of the past. Because what happens is in your lifetime, you had losses and what you labeled as failures, and you had places where you tried to go somewhere and you couldn't go there, or you wanted to get picked for a team and you didn't get picked, or you lost somebody that you cared about, or a relationship didn't work out, or a marriage got dissolved, or a child was lost, or a mother died, or whatever happened. All of those things happened in your lifetime, and they weave and make up the fabric of your life. And you made decisions in those moments. You reacted to those things how you were in that moment. In that moment, whether you were 12, 20, or 50, or 70, you had a particular set of skills, and you reacted to what happened with those skills. And as you've elevated and gotten older, your skill sets have changed, which means that your response to what happened would have elevated and changed with it, but you're still stuck at 12, or 15, or 10, or 20, or 30. Wherever that happened, you made some decisions, and then you started to interact with your daily activities based on those decisions. So if somebody broke up with you, or a marriage was lost, or a relationship didn't work out, and this particular person did something. So if Fred did a particular set of behaviors, and then you divorced Fred, and then you were with Bob, and Bob started to do something that looked like what Fred did 10 years ago, you automatically say, oh, Bob's just like Fred. I knew it. And then you probably end up maybe divorced for a second time, or it's not turning out for you. Same thing with jobs, same things with not getting picked for a team. You're 12, you go out for a soccer team, you don't get picked. It makes you feel shitty. It makes you feel bad. You feel like nobody wants you, nobody likes you, you're not worth anything. I have news, that stayed with you. The next time there was something for you to get chosen from, be it a work team or another sports team or something in college, you came from a place where you didn't get picked. So even though you went to give yourself to get chosen again, you came with a whole sack of I didn't get picked and everything that meant for you. So you didn't walk into this new opportunity like, oh, a new team for me to see if I can join. No, you came in like, oh, it's a new team for me to see if I can join, but I already know that I don't ever get picked or it never works out, okay? So do you see? So by the time you're like 50 or 40, you're like, all right, and you're in your life now, but you're not in your life. You're in your interpretation of the past. You're here, and you are not looking with fresh eyes, and you are not hearing with fresh ears what is occurring for you now. Now, what happens is you interpret reality from the past, and then you think something about that, and then it makes you feel a particular way. And then you take an action based on the way that you feel and the way that you think. And then you create a particular energy that surrounds that. And then that becomes your life. Because your thoughts and your feelings and your words and your energy, that becomes your set point, okay? That's your attraction point. So now, as much as you want to be a millionaire or own a business or have a new relationship or be healthy or lose weight or whatever the heck it is, as much as you want that, You are listening and looking for, your filter becomes like this, and you can see out this one tiny hole, and this is your life, right? And you have to crack that open, and you have to go, okay. And the first step is to recognize it, like, oh, let me just, and that's what I hope and intend to crack open for you today, that you at least start to say to yourself, maybe what Noelle said means something. Let me just think about that. Like when this happens, am I looking at this as this, and then I'm going to make some decisions based on this moment, how I'm feeling, my skill set, what I can handle right now today? Or am I looking at this, and am I feeling how I felt when I was 10? Am I feeling how I felt when I was 30? Am I feeling how I felt when my husband left me, when my wife cheated on me, when this one died, when this happened, okay? Because what happens is you're like this is your life. And then you're going, how come I don't have the life I want? How come my life sucks? I don't know. I read all these books, I say affirmations, I do stuff, I don't know why it's not working. I have news. It's not working because, number one, you have to do it every day, and we're going to talk about that before I leave you guys. You have to have a practice where you're consciously looking at this stuff. You have to have a posse that helps you look at it. You have to have friends that call you out on your BS. You have to have friends that say to you, hey, Stacy, maybe you can be a multi-million-dollar business owner. Maybe it doesn't have to look like it looked when we were in high school and it looked that way to you or this way. You can have anything that you want. You have to have friends that support that. You have to start looking also at what you're creating a platform for in your life. Like, who are your listeners and what are you listening to? Because that goes to set up your future as well. If you are surrounding yourself with people who are not happening and they're not elevating and they're not working on themselves, all that's going to do is take your energy away from you. And that's part of responding from the past, right? So we feel responsible for some of these people back here. We feel like it's our responsibility to make them happy, or it's our responsibility to save them, or it's our responsibility to build them up, or it's our responsibility to drag them forward, even if we can barely walk because we're dragging so many people behind us. I have news. It's not your responsibility. It isn't. If they're your kids until they're 18 or 20, it's your responsibility. Other than that, someone else's happiness is not your responsibility. Even your children's individual happiness is not your responsibility. It's your responsibility to protect them, guide them, provide for them. But their happiness and whether they turn into big complainers or positive folks, you guide that, but you ultimately can't control that. You just can't. So for those of us that are parents, at some point, we just have to know that we did the best we could, and then it's hands off. Everyone has their own karma, right? They got to follow their path, whatever that is. Doesn't always look the way that we want it to. So in order for you to get to where you are, you've reached a particular level of success at this particular age. Most of you, a lot of you in this room have known me for many, many decades. So I know your stories and you know mine. We've reached a particular point. When you reach that point, we've studied a lot of things. If we don't create those things and keep them up as actions, if we don't keep them up as practices, if we don't keep those conversations moving forward, you're gonna get trapped back there. You're gonna get stuck back there. You're going to be unable to move ahead, unable to move forward. There are conversations that are running you, and they've been running your whole life, and they're woven insidiously underneath everything. And you have to do real linguistic surgery to find them. The first thing you have to do is know that they are there, and then start looking. Where that comes up a lot is about money. A lot of people have, or self-worth. So conversations from the past look like money doesn't grow on trees. You have to eat all your supper because people in Siberia are starving. People in China have no food. You have to eat everything, even if you don't like it, right? We have to save everything. We have to take every wrapping paper. Save the wrapping paper. Don't throw it away. Fold it up. Don't throw away that box. Don't, okay? That's where it starts. And we've got a great example of that. For those of you that don't know, my partner in crime, Tracy, she's been my best friend for over 3 decades. And my husband and Rodney, another best friend of ours in the back of the room, this is my posse that travels with me when I do these events. And Tracy flew in from Indiana yesterday to be here with us. and she's going to share with you a great story that we uncovered about a conversation that was running her. But first, I'll set her up for this. Part of what she does is organize and makes things work more efficiently in homes. So she goes into homes and declutters. And so as a result of that, she loves to make new use out of something old. And so she came to visit for my birthday in August. And first of all, she's a leader, she's a coach, and she rolled up in the airport with a suitcase that was held together by duct tape. To which I said a lot of exemplatives, and then I said, I don't even want to be seen walking through the airport with you, because what is happening here? So we get to my house, and before we were late leaving for the airport, so my husband and I were running to get to the airport, and there was this, I was scoping out the house to see if there was anything. I throw everything away all the time. I'm constantly either giving it away or throwing it away. So I look around the house, and there's this dish garden, and it's kind of old, and it's kind of yucky, and I'm like, oh, that looks really bad. So I just grabbed it. We were running. I grabbed it. I threw it in the bucket. We went out the door. Here comes Tracy to visit, rolling up with her suitcase with the duct tape, and she comes in the house, and the next thing I know, she's fishing in my trash can, and she's pulling out the dish. And she's like shaking it out, and she's going, we can give, and then my husband says, we can make that a dish for the squirrels, and we can do this with it, and we can do that. So I just laughed. And then the next morning, we were up in my sitting room, and we were talking about our lives for the future and what we're creating and what we're looking at. And she was crying about her what she perceived to be her economic state in life. And she said, how come blah, blah, blah? And now, if you're a very close friend of mine, I don't just cut into you unless you ask me, right? Because I don't want people to not want to be around me because I'm always coaching. So I don't do that. If you ask me, I'll tell you. So she was crying, and I said, would you like for me to tell you? And she said, yes, I would. I would like you to tell me. And I said, you're a cheap honker. That's what your problem is. You're cheap. You're so cheap. And you know what's true? You're a wealthy woman. You own your home free and clear. You have this, and this. By the world's standards, you're a wealthy woman, but you see yourself as a poor, cheap honker. And so I'm going to give the floor to Tracy and let her tell you the rest of the story, because she, rather than get mad at me, she took it and she did something with it. And that's what the opportunity is for vetting out those conversations.
So the conversation runs you, right? The conversation is what creates the reality that you're living, the things that you were told. My grandmother moved here from Italy with her family right off the boat during the Depression. They had to do what they had to do to get by. They would open the refrigerator, they'd find stuff, and they'd make a meal, a peasant meal. She called them, and man, were they delicious, but it was all the leftover, it was all the stuff. And the ham bone, don't throw the ham away, because what we can do with the ham bone. And so when you grow up with that, you kind of create that space. So then my dad had that same mentality of if it's broken, you fix it. You don't throw it away, you fix it. You don't go buy a new one, you fix it. Like, let's make it better. Let's put duct tape on the corners. There's nothing wrong with it. It's still wheeling. It still packs the clothes. It just has gray duct tape on an orange suitcase. Bad. So and then so what I do, I go into people's homes and their offices and their spaces, and I recreate things. And if you don't have a lot of money, we can make it work. We can paint it, we can strip the paint off, we can do whatever we can to make it better, right? Why go to some schwanky place and buy something new when, well, because you can, because you're wealthy. And like Noelle said, when your filter is like this, you just don't, I didn't recognize what was true, and what was true was this. And when I went like that, I'm like, whoa, I do. So, out goes the orange suitcase. When I got home, I noticed the black suitcase had duct tape on it too, so that one went out too, and I bought myself a 3-piece set, and I didn't even look at the price. I go, I like that one, I like that color, go. Okay? I have, out in Indiana, I had a CRV. I bought it from somebody, and it was a fair price. I'm like, okay, I can have that, and it's okay, but it doesn't speak to the wealthy woman that I am. It doesn't speak to who I want to be and where I'm going in 2022. So I sold it to a girl that needed a car because she's going to get her license for the first time. I sold it for less than I wanted to, and I bought myself an Audi. And I am rocking it, and I'm feeling it, and I'm owning it. And it's a beautiful thing to get cracked open and to realize who am I, and who do I want to be, and where am I going, and what am I going to make of it when I get there. So my mom came to visit recently, and I guess I never understood where that piece of, living with my dad and my Nana, yes, but there was something underlying that made me hold tight to stuff, okay? My mom came to visit recently with her fiance, and we're out to dinner, and she ordered this soup, and it was a little too spicy for her. Her fiance is Tom, so she gave it to Tom, and she said, "Here, Tom, try this. You might like it." And so he had a few sips, but he was committed to eating his dinner, and he knew that he didn't want the soup, right? And she said, "Well, you should eat it. You should eat it." And he's like, "I'm fine." She goes, "Well, it's going to go to waste." And I sat there across the table, and I went, "Oh." So then we're at my house, we're having dinner, and a friend of mine made homemade applesauce, so I served the applesauce to Tom and my mom, and we're all eating our dinner, and my mom couldn't finish hers, and so it's a beautiful thing that Tom's not a huge man, because she's constantly giving him food. So she said, "Here, Tom, finish my applesauce, And again, he said, "No, I've had enough." And she said, "Well, we can't throw it away." And again, I went, "What? Like, this is where it's coming from, that underlying, that place that you don't even realize, those little things." Recently, my mom is talking about this bracelet that she wants, and she wants my sister to go look at it because it's a little expensive. She says it's a little expensive, so I want you to look at it to make sure that it's really great. And me and my sister looked at ourselves like, "Well, it's a little expensive. $5,000? What are you spending on this bracelet? Like, it's a little expensive." Because that's what I think is expensive for a bracelet. $5,000, right? She says, "Oh, it's $500. I'm like, "Oh." So the space that Noelle was saying, your reality, my mother's reality was $500 is expensive. And I've moved over to this wealthy woman space of $5,000 is expensive. Like, do you see the difference? And so when you grow up with this, and you live with this, and we hold on to, and don't let, and hand-me-downs, and let me sew that, and let me fix that, it kind of gets into your bones, right? Gets into your blood, and until you just crack it open, like Noelle said, and you just say, "Okay, there's a new space for me. There's someplace different for me to come from. If that's where I want to go, how am I going to get there? Well, I can't take that thought with me, and I can't take that thought or that memory. So what do I get to recreate? How can I recreate this?" And so for me, it's hanging around with people that live that kind of life. It's reading books about that kind of life. It's calling myself out. It's having an accountability partner. It's just leveling up, right? Leveling up, and to be there and to know, fake it till you make it, baby. But then live in the space that, yeah, this is mine. This is mine. I get to have this. Here we go. You coming? Let's go.
So as you can see, that conversation, she heard that, she lived in it, and then it became her life. And she didn't even know it until she sat across from her mom and heard her mother try to stuff food in her husband's face because she didn't want it to go to waste. And that is when she really, it was just amazing that she was able to take what I had said to her and then work it all the way through, start replacing things and getting better things, but then understanding where it came from and how it was living inside her, and she didn't even know it. Like, we're older than we were 30 years ago, and that's been running her life for all this time. All this time, she's been saving and scrimping and, and doing well, but not. So what happens is you end up elevating, but then you don't even recognize it. And then you're not even appreciative of it because you have, but you're still living like and I'm using money because it's just a great example. You have, and then you're still living like a poor, cheap honker. But it's not even the truth about you anymore, but you don't even see it. So you can't even come past it because you don't even know that it's operating there. It's like one of the people that watched the show said to me, it's like if you have a DOS system, right, which is a really old way to run a computer. If you had a DOS system that was running under your current operatings, like under Windows, or I'm so not technical, Brian would be ashamed of me right now. It's like if you had an old operating system and it was operating underneath the new one so it would slow it down. So even though the new one is like fast and hip and cool and would do everything you needed to do, this thing is still running, and it's like the drag, right? It's like you're dragging it along the old way. And an excellent way that I language this for people that I feel like you can really understand is you have a refrigerator, right? It's filled with food. And you have something in there, you keep putting food in, and then stuff keeps spoiling, right? And you don't know how come. Like, how come it's spoiling so fast? Like, and you look in every place that you can see, and nothing looks rotting, nothing looks bad, and you're like, okay, I don't know what's happening. And then way in the back, in the drawer, in the bottom, when you pull it out, behind there is a rotting orange. And you go, oh. And this is what those underlying conversations are. It's the rotting orange in your refrigerator. And what happens is it's contaminating everything else. So you have fresh food and you put it in your fridge and it doesn't stay fresh as long and you can't figure out why. So you have a new thought and you do some affirmations every day, or you do a practice, or you write it down, or you have a goal and you move forward a little, but you don't move forward a lot and you can't figure out why it's not working. And then you get mad because it's not working. And so then it's kind of like lost, right? Because you made like 3 steps forward and then it's not really working. So you're like, oh, this doesn't work. And then, because you're not putting on your gloves and getting out the bleach and you're not digging in. And so that's what my goal today is, to have you say to yourself, I'm going to put on the gloves, I'm going to get the bleach spray, and I'm going to start digging in. I'm going to start opening up and seeing what's going on there. Like, that calling Tracy out as a cheap honker allowed her to go, oh, okay. And her first reaction was, well, all right, I'm willing. She was willing because she knows that I love her and we've been together for we've been friends for decades. So it was like, okay, I'm not saying this to you to hurt you or to hurt your feelings. I'm saying because you asked me, Noelle, how come my life isn't the way that I want it to be? And I was like, do you really want me to tell you? Okay, here's why. So it's like, okay, let me try that on. So if I'm trying to lose weight and I can't lose weight and I don't know why, there's probably a conversation underneath everything that's causing that. And it could be, that you're afraid of success and you equate being thin and fit with success. It could be that who knows? It could be something that you heard somewhere when you were 12 or 10 or 9 or 20. It could be something somebody said in a room of the house and you believed it or you bought into it. I don't know what your conversations are, but whether you're 50 or 70 or 80 or 100, if your life is not exactly the way that you want it to be in every moment, you've got something under there. There's something to look at. There's something to vet out. And there's something to dig into. And the first step at changing anything is at least being willing to look and see what's there. So you're not going to go from like the way you are now to the amazing person that you want to be. It's never done, by the way. Like, I've been studying success principles since I was 12. I'm 53. I've been doing this a long time. I am well trained, and I still have moments, and I still spend an hour every morning with a practice because I don't know any other way to keep myself in the conversation except to do it over and over and over and over. And I will tell you, from training leaders and teaching for over 2 decades now, the biggest thing that I see in why people are not where they want to be is they don't have a practice. They don't have a practice that's consistent. Even if it's 10 minutes a day, if that's all you tell me that you can find, if it's not consistent, it doesn't mean anything. Because it's too easy. It's too easy to go back the way that it was, because these old conversations, they create a pathway in your brain and in your actions. It's like if you walked on a well-worn trail, right? It's like the Robert Frost poem, you have 2 roads, right? One's well-traveled, one isn't. That's how it is every day for you. You wake up, put your foot on the floor, and what do you say to yourself? I guarantee most of you say, son of a this, and I have to do this, and I can't, all right? That's usually how it rolls. Or if you're super aware, you might say to yourself, it's going to be a great day. But then 2 minutes later, something happens and you're off and running on the well-worn trail of your sad tale of how your life isn't the way you want it to be. To train yourself into a new way of thinking, you have to train yourself. It's like as if you wanted to go to the Olympics and I said to you, Warren, if you want to be an Olympic swimmer, you have to train X amount of hours every single day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. That's how you get to be an Olympic gold medalist. No joke. People don't do that. I'm going to tell you right now. They go to a seminar like this one. They read a book. They watch a YouTube video. They're like, oh, this is a great breakthrough. I took a Tony Robbins seminar. I took a Darren Hardy seminar. This is fantastic. I feel great. Then they go home. And they still feel great for an hour, 2 hours, maybe even 2 days. And then their wife or their husband or their kids does something. And then they're like, oh! Okay? And then you're gone. You're gone down the road. And then maybe you like have the notebook from the course that you did or whatever you listened to. And so then like maybe 3 days later or a week later, you're like, okay, I'm going to get back in that place. I'm going to read this notebook. I'm going to look at these notes. I'm going to read this chapter of this book. And then you're like, all right, I'm good. And then you're going through your day. And then bam! And all of a sudden, somebody pisses you off. And now you're just gone. Because most people react. You don't respond. You react in your well-worn trajectory, in your well-worn pathway. You know this. You know how it goes. You know if you get mad at your wife or your husband, it'll be okay. And then everything will be all right again. And you know how to go this way. And then you'll feel good, and then you'll feel bad. And then you'll wake up and you'll go to bed and it'll start all over again. But you know that. You know how that works. So that's safe to you. You're complacent. And you believe that you're happy there. Because you stopped expecting more. You stopped realizing that possibility exists. You fooled yourself into thinking that this was your life. And on this well-worn pathway, you do some affirmations, you watch a video, you go to a class. You feel pretty good. You take 3 more steps. Everything's, all right, this is good, this is good. But then it's bad, then it's really bad, then it's terrible, then it's good, then it's bad, then it's terrible, then it's good, then it's bad, then it's terrible, then it's good, then it's bad, then it's terrible. And this is your life, and this is where you go, and this is your trajectory. It's not good every day. It could be, but it isn't, because you don't do the work to make it that way. And you don't push yourself to be consistent, and you don't keep reframing your reality, and you don't keep realizing that it's your interpretation. So something happened that looks awful, and we label that because that's what the world told us to do. It's a travesty. My mother died 20 years before I thought she should have. I could label that as a travesty, and I could tell you a whole story about how it came to be. I don't see what good that does. All that's going to do is set me into a path that I don't believe is helpful. My mother was a coach, and she was a good one. And she was a trainer of warriors, and she was a damn good one. And she made particular choices and did particular things. She got into her well-worn pathway. And that's what happened. And then she forgot how to get out of there. And then that became what she followed. And then she followed it right out of here 20 years before she planned. So that's what happens when you don't keep cracking into the uncomfortable conversations. That's what happens when you don't keep changing the interpretation. That's what happens when you accept what the world tells you about how something is. You follow your well-worn trajectory. And then it might end your life sooner than you think. It might make you poorer than you should be. It might make you less vibrant. It might make you 20 or 30 pounds overweight. It could do a lot of things, because what happens is you lose your vibrancy. You lose your life energy. You lose your swag, and you follow the well-worn pathway, and then little do you know, you start to shuffle your feet, because first you were all about, yeah, I got this. And now you're like, yeah, okay, it's all right, it's okay. Okay? That's what happens. It will happen, and it may have already happened to you, and that might be why you're here. What's possible is to not have that, to not have to do that. What's possible is for you to wake up every day in a fresh conversation with a fresh interpretation. That's all on you. There's nothing in this world that has power over you, nothing. I don't care what it is. I don't care if it's a medical diagnosis, whatever you think you have or might have or what somebody told you. No. I've seen all kinds of things, and if anybody wants to know in detail, I'm happy to share it at a different time. But I have seen lives saved and stage 4 cancer reversed and all kinds of things because someone decided to make a different interpretation. Someone decided not today. Someone decided that they were going to do something different and see something different, or that we were going to stand for something different. And there's a few of you in this room that we've stood for something different in moments where we could have made a different choice, and we made something else happen because we said no, not today. Whatever it is, whatever is weighing you down or plaguing you, or whatever it is that you think you can't change, that just isn't the truth. The truth is possibility exists and you can move anything around. Here's the kicker. You have to do the work. You have to do the work. You have to do the work every day. You have to come up against yourself every day. Gurdjieff said that the biggest war that you'll ever have is with yourself. And that's the truth. That is the truth. You will, this is what will happen, because your complacent habits and your shuffling of your feet in the well-worn pathway, you will want to stay there. And in order to get your life to go differently, you will have to get out of there, and it will be uncomfortable, and it might be sad, and it might mean you have to divest yourself of people and things that are comfortable to you, but you can do it. It's up to you. You're the one with the power. It's your interpretation. No matter what happens, it's how you interpret what happens. We can't control what happens. We can't control what other people do. We can't control sometimes life events. We can't control why things shake out the way that they do. What we absolutely can control is our interpretation of that, and then what we do with it. You can call it a tragedy, or you can call it a blessing. You can call it a travesty, or you can call it the thing that changed your life forever and you were never the same. You can call it whatever you want. Just be aware that your future is defined by what you call it. Understand that whatever you call it is what you will become. Whatever road you go on is the road that will continue to be the road for you. So the first step into recognizing a different way or opening up some possibility is look at what's running you. What's the rotting thing in the fridge that you can't see? Where is it? What is it? Who said it? Where did it come from? What did it tell you? Did someone tell you you weren't worth anything? Mine was unworthy. That was a big thing for me when I was younger. That was like, my father left when we were 4, when I was 4, and somehow I made up a story about how I wasn't worth anything or I was unworthy. And then there was a whole, probably a decade and a half of stuff that came from that conversation. And even stuff all the way into when I was 40, little bits and pieces of that, even with all the work that I've done and all the seminars I've taken and all the trainings I've been to, Landmark and Sterling and Darren Hardy and Tony Robbins and everything that I've done, I still had places where there was something I couldn't see because I didn't quite language it like that, like a conversation that's running under everything. It's helpful for you to just start asking yourself the question when you see a decision that you always make, like maybe you go out to dinner and you only ever tip, 15%. You only ever tip exactly what you're supposed to tip. And if someone suggests that you tip more, you're highly offended. Why? Why is that? Why couldn't you just say, okay, maybe I will, or okay, maybe I won't? Whenever you're highly offended about something or you're super aggravated, there's something in there for you to see. Mom used to say, if I called you an aardvark and you weren't one and you didn't think you were one, it wouldn't bother you at all. But if I called you an aardvark and you secretly thought that you were one, you'd get upset with me. It would annoy you. You'd get mad. Why? Because I secretly think that I am, right? So when somebody treated me as if I was unworthy or there was a circumstance that made me feel right, then I was like, oh, see, that was evidence. Then you start to stockpile evidence. It's like, oh, see, I told you, I'm not worth anything. All right, cool. I really am an aardvark. I'm starting to look like one. Looks like this is okay. Yeah, see, because you'll amass a huge amount of evidence for your sad tale, and then you'll drag it along, and then you can't even move down the well-worn path because you got so much stuff back here. And that's how most of you are living your lives. You've got all this stuff. And most of you in this room, you know better. I know you know better because I know who trained you. And I guarantee you that you stopped cracking into that, like with a bat, like cracking into it and breaking it open for yourself and saying, what's happening here? Or you made some decision that seemed like it had a catastrophic result, and you started blaming and, oh my God, those people, they tried to cheat me. I knew it. I lost that money. He left me. Okay? You got like that. And then you got more like that. And then you got evidence, right? And then you told your friends, and they got like that, right? You have to be careful who you share with and who you share what with, right? Because if you're really on a path to transformation and cracking open into new conversations, you do not need the gossip mongers to help you. They're not helpful. So when you do have something occur and you find yourself reacting, first of all, just take a breath and take a moment, and then encourage yourself to respond, which is where your power is, not to react. And a reaction is all emotional, right? So you react. That's like when you get really angry, really sad, really pissed off, flustered, anxiety, like that's a reaction. Nothing valuable or good can come from that. So it's best to just calm yourself, walk away, take a breath, take a breather, think about what happened, and then figure out a path to a solution or divesting yourself of that relationship, whatever the case may be. But anything that happens in a screaming, crying, whatever fest, there's nothing happening there. The only thing that's happening there is all reactivity. And whatever decision you think you made in that moment, it's not going to stick anyway, because you were just a sheer reaction. And that you lose all your power in that moment. In the moment where you're reacting based on your, and by the way, a reaction comes from the past. Always, always from the past. Because if you, I'm picking on Stacy because she's been my friend for decades and decades. But if Stacy said something to me and it hurt my feelings, and it was just clean in this moment, she said something, I didn't like it, her and I could have a conversation about that. If Stacy said something that reminded me of something that Susie said or that Beatrice did or that, okay, now I'm like, oh, because why? Because I carried all of that into this moment. And now I'm like, all right, Stacy, right? But it's got nothing to do with Stacy. Because Stacy might have said, Noelle, that jacket looks terrible on you. You should wear a different jacket. And instead of being like, okay, she's been my friend for 30 years and she probably wants to make sure I look good, so maybe I ought to listen to her or ask her why she thinks that, right? If a whole bunch of somebody's told me that I look awful in particular clothing or whatever the case may be, now I'm like ready for a battle, man. How dare you tell me I don't look that, okay? You see what I'm saying, right? It's you're coming into the moment with all this stuff behind you. And it happens a lot in relationships. Husbands, wives, girlfriends, boyfriends, significant others, partners, whatever. That all the time it happens. There is very little that happens in your current relationship that's not based on either the past history of that person, if you've been together for a really long time, or the past history with like 10 other persons or whatever the case may be. But whatever, is happening right here, right now with this couple, it's like 70 couples over here and 70 couples over there, and now these couples are like, okay? But it isn't even about that. Like, you left the toilet seat up. That's not a big deal. You left the cap off the toothpaste. It's really not, in the grand scheme of the world today, that is not a big problem. But if you came from a bunch of relationships where whoever didn't do what they were supposed to and they made a mess and then then all of a sudden you left the cap off the toothpaste is like, I want a divorce. Oh, like what? So it either stems from a whole bunch of something's happening that you guys didn't handle in the moment. And when they finally left the cap off the toothpaste that last time, you're now like 10 years of not saying what you really meant is now all about the cap on the toothpaste. And that's why people get blindsided, by the way, in relationship. Because you are because you are interacting with your life from the past all the time and you're not seeing with fresh eyes and listening with fresh ears, your relationships are the biggest place that you suffer the effects of this. Because you are trying to interact with each other on the daily, and that's new stuff, by the way. Whatever's happening there is fresh, but it never is, because it's about the last 10 years, 5 years, 2 years, 3 months of all the stuff you didn't say, because, it's like that. You get what I'm saying, right? Rarely are you ever living in the moment right now. And there are those of us that have lost people that are very close to us that can tell you, if you're not living in the moment right now, you're missing out, because all we have is right now. We don't know what we don't know. We have a responsibility to live alive in this moment. And we have a responsibility to the people that are no longer here to do that, because that's what they would want us to do. They would want us to live in the moment, and they would want us to look at how we're dragging around the past.
I don't really remember where I learned it or heard it, but Tony Robbins was telling a story about, he's married now, and he was telling a story about the first interaction conflict that occurred between him and his wife. And so he was saying that as a young boy in his home, when there was conflict, you stay in the room, you give everybody the respect to speak. If they raise their voice, they raise their voice. Everybody gets to say what they need to say. We clean it up. Nobody goes anywhere till we're done, right? His wife grew up when there was conflict in the family. You do not raise your voice. If you're offended, you get to leave, but you have to come back. And everybody's, till the conversation's done. So if you remember what I just said, so they're having their first thing. He raises his voice, she walks out of the room, he's like, you don't get to leave the room, you don't get to raise your voice. All this, because of what they knew, right? Because of who they were. And like Noelle said, it could have created, I'm out. That might have been what happened to me in my second marriage. I can't remember. I'm out. But what they did is they said, okay, how can we make this work? That was yours, and that was mine. But now here we are. We need to create a new story. We have to have a new conversation. We need to make it up. How can we make it up? How can we make it so that it works, so that our marriage goes in the direction to the place that we would like it to go? Eye on the prize, right? Focus on the goal. How do we need to get there? So it's just another example of how if you carry in it and you own it and you think that they could have ended up in being separated. So you don't have to own what was. You get to create it brand new right now. So, yeah.
And that's not just true for your relationship, right? What Tracy's sharing with you about Tony and his wife, that's true for your whole life. That's true for how you view your work, how you view your entrepreneurialism, how you view building a business, how you view interacting with your children, whatever the case may be. There's always a space for a fresh conversation, a fresh listening, a fresh perspective. People don't usually take that space. That's the issue, right? So now, you've all heard about the law of attraction. I know you have, because I know everybody's in this room. And so what the law of attraction says is that my vibration, my personal energy, kind of like where I'm at, is my set point. And I'm going to bring to me where I'm at. So if you are reacting from the past and pissed off most of the time and annoyed and walking the well-worn path because it's familiar and all of those things, you're vibrating somewhere around complacency and kind of putting up with stuff, and then maybe you'd go down to apathy sometimes, and like that, right? So you're kind of like, it's like 12 emotional levels. Like this is like anger right here, and then under there is like, you know, apathy and sadness and all this kind of stuff under here. So when you are only living your life from what you know, number one, you don't have new energy, because every day, you already think you know how it's going to go. You have no space for possibility or anything new to happen. And even if you are smart enough to be a prosperity practitioner and like you say 3 gratitudes a day, you say 3 affirmations or whatever the case may be, like that isn't enough. I have news. That's not enough to hold you. It's not enough to hold you when the day starts to turn into a piece of crap. You have to have more teeth in where you want to go. You have to have more invested in who you want to be and what you want your future to look like than you do in what's happening like in the moment on the daily in here, right? Your set point becomes where you're at. So that would be your demeanor most of the time, whatever that is, be it annoyance. There's a lot of people that operate from annoyance. That's pretty much like sometimes they're happy and sometimes they're really mad, but most of it, like they're just annoyed. If you talk to them, they're annoyed, they huff, they sigh, they like can't be bothered. Right? It's too much. That's where most people live. And so that's where they're attracting. So they attract, so how the law of attraction works is you attract experiences and people and events that are at your set point. So if you live in annoyance, and when you just use that as an example, you will actually attract, like a magnet, more things to be annoyed about. More, your spouse or significant other will do more things to annoy you. Your workplace will be more annoying and give you more to complain about. You see, because you're a magnet. Whether you like it or not, believe me or not, I don't really care. That's just a universal law. It's the truth. Wherever you are vibing, you will bring that to you like a magnet. When you start to really dig in and look at this and look at how you can change your life, I recognize, Tracy and I recognize, we recognize that you're not going to go from absolute apathy to joy. It's not going to, it just isn't. Like, and if I said that, because that's what happens when you get out of one of those trainings, right? You went from like apathy, like you got there on a Friday night or a Friday and life was sucking. And then you spent the weekend with like everybody and you're all like, woo! And then you get home and you're like, yeah. And so you just went from there to there. And then what happens? Monday morning happens and like your boss calls or your kid pukes on you or something happens. And now you're annoyed. And then you're slowly like back down to apathy where it's like too much. It's just too much. And you remember with like a fleeting thought, like, oh, I was so happy. I was so filled with euphoria at the end of that weekend. What happened? And then you get mad at yourself and then you think, oh, I must not have gotten it right. I must not be transformed. It must be useless. Why should I even try? Okay, and then, so that's what happens. You go from here to here to here to here. And instead of an incremental uptick, you're beating on yourself because you were way up here. First you were way down here, then you went way up there. Now it sucks. Now you're down here. Now you're like, oh my God, I'm a failure. I can't be transformed. My life is never going to change. I don't care what they said. Okay? I know y'all do it. I know you do. Because even I still have those moments. So here's the trick. Go to the next best thing. Go to the next highest set point that you can get yourself to. If you are in apathy, believe it or not, resentment and anger is higher than apathy. So if you can get yourself mad, you have some energy, and then you can do something with that. And then it goes like that, right? And then eventually you get to places like euphoria and joy. Don't beat on yourself when you can't get yourself out of, if you're having a bad day and you're feeling depressed or shitty or whatever, and you can't get yourself to joy or even above the anger midpoint, it's okay. If you can get yourself from apathy to anger, we're moving. If you can get to resentment, we're moving. And then maybe the next day you can get a little higher than that and a little higher. And complacency is actually higher than resentment. And so you can forward motion. This is a process. You are never going to get to a point. I don't care how long you've studied, who taught you, what seminar you went to. It doesn't matter. It's a process. You are never going to have 365 days where you leap out of the bed and you don't have to do any work on yourself and you're like, yeah. It doesn't happen like that. Okay? You can do that, but you have to consciously do it. You put your foot on the floor and your monkey mind goes, and you go, nope, not today. I'm not today. And then you choose the next thing. That is your choice. That is your interpretation. That is you creating your own set point. And that is your commitment to having it be better. And the good news is when you do that, and you consciously are like faking it till you make it day after day, like pushing yourself, it gets easier, right? So now at this point, after 4 decades plus of doing this stuff, like I can move myself pretty fast, 15 minutes, 10 minutes. Sometimes it takes 30 minutes. Sometimes I got to call her or I got to call him and I have to just have them like remind me. So it's good. You have to have those people that you can call, but I can move myself pretty fast. So the more you do it, the faster you can get out of that. Don't think that there's something wrong with you because it occurs, because it will. And it will occur on the daily, most likely. You might get lucky and you might have like 4 or 5 days where you're like euphoric, and that's good. It's probably not likely that it will be consistent like that. And this is where people lose it. This is why when you go to these trainings and do these seminars and do all this stuff, why you can't get it to stick, because they don't tell you that you have to be consistent. Nobody really says, like, this is hard work. Like, you go to a seminar and you pay thousands of dollars for it and it's fantastic. And you're, right? But then nobody really speaks to the daily, it's like training for the Olympics. I'm not joking. It's literally like that. Like if your life is in a place right now that's uncomfortable and it's not working, it's going to be like slogging through the mud for a little bit. Every day will be a little better, but you're not going to go from slogging to prancing. And It's not. You're going to slog, and then you're going to go a little faster, and then you go a little faster, then you'll run, then maybe you'll prance. And what happens is because you don't go from slogging to prancing, or because you don't hold, you think there's something wrong with you. And you think, I can't do this, or you think it's not working. And then a little bit of you gives up every time, and then you give up a little more, and then before you know it, you went back to all the old stuff that wasn't working because it was just more comfortable, and it's less hard. However, it's not really what you want, and it's stealing your aliveness on the daily. And how you're framing things and what you're calling them has everything to do with how you feel about them, which then is how you language them. You know, I had a car incident, I call it, and it almost cost me my life, wasn't my fault. And immediately I started calling it the incident instead of an accident. And immediately I started calling out the blessing in it, immediately. And I hardly didn't tell that many people. And I didn't post it all over Facebook, okay? Because I know better. Whatever you call it, it will become. If someone does something to you that you don't like, or takes something from you, or whatever, if you call it a travesty, it will become more of a travesty every single day. If you call it a horrid circumstance, it will become more of a horrid circumstance every single day. Whatever you name it, then you've claimed it, then it's yours. Now you'll have feelings about it, then you'll have thoughts about it, then that will lead to actions about it. And before you know it, that becomes your life. My favorite thing to equate this to is, you remember the Peanuts character that had the dirt cloud over his head, Pigpen, and everywhere he went, there was the dirt cloud, went everywhere that he went. And that's what you do to yourself when you're, number one, when you're complaining and criticizing and saying it's a travesty and being unkind to people, like all of that. You're creating a vibe around you, and you're creating like this big dirt cloud around you. And then what happens is solutions can't even find you. Like if there was a solution, it could literally pound you on the head and you wouldn't even see it because there's so much dirt around you. There's so much clogged up that you are that you can't even see. You don't know what you don't know. You can't tell me that there's no solution to your difficulty because you don't even know, because you're so busy and invested in the interpretation of the difficulty as being something that you can't move. You can't even see what might be in there for you as a possibility because you've got Marie invested in Jamie and Viola and Warren, and you told them what happened, because I mean, look what happened to me. Did you see what they did to me? And now they're all like, oh my God, yeah. And now I'm going to take Kirsten and DJ and Aaron and tell them, okay? So now every time I pull in a fellow, person into my dirt cloud, now I've got okay? So now after I spent a week or so telling them all about my problem, even if I called them up and said, hey, they would most likely be like, oh, that won't work because, you said it was going to be like that. Do you see? So you actually you're bringing everybody into your clod of dirt, and then you're wondering why nothing's working. You're wondering why you can't break out of it. You're wondering why your business doesn't succeed. You're wondering why you can't lose weight. You're wondering why you never have a relationship that works. You're wondering why. And the why is because you're not coming from a fresh interpretation. You're not living as if possibility exists. You're not acting like that. And the people around you are invested in the way that you behave, and they mirror your behavior back to you. And now you have a whole posse around you you're like a big walking dirt cloud, all of you. And then nothing can happen. Nothing can find you. Even if someone knocked on your door and presented a solution, you would say it won't work, because you can't even see. So do you remember the old story about the terrible storm, and it's like a 3-level house, and the guy prays to God and he says, please God, will you save me? Please save me. Everything's going to flood. I don't want to leave my home, but because I know God's going to save me. God, I know you're going to save me. So here comes the police banging on the door trying to get this guy to evacuate. And he says, no, God's going to save me. I'm good. Now the water goes up to the 2nd level of his house, and they come to the window, and a raft comes with like the Coast Guard, and they say, come on. And he says, no, God's going to save me. And he's like, and then he gets to the roof, and they send a helicopter. And the guy's like, no, I don't need to leave my house because God's going to save me. I believe in God. He's going to save me. Now the guy drowns, and he dies, and he gets to heaven. And he says to St. Peter, what the heck? I'm a prayerful man. I prayed. I said God was going to save me. St. Peter's like, dude, I sent the police. I sent the Coast Guard. I sent a helicopter. Okay? So that's what happens when you get so invested. That particular man in that story saw his saving as only one thing. He thought a light was going to come from the sky and dry up all the water and save him. God sent 3 vehicles for saving. He took none of them because he couldn't see. He was so invested in his interpretation of what saving meant that he didn't even see that he could have been saved 3 times over. He missed it because he knew, if God's going to save me, it's going to look like this. I have news for you. You don't know what the hell it's going to look like. If you're a prayerful person and you're asking God for help, or just the universe or whatever, you don't know what the help is going to look like. It could look like the worst person that you can't stand coming into your environment and offering to help you with something, and you're like, oh my God, I can't. Okay? You don't know. You don't know. You don't know what you don't know. If you are open to it looking any way, if you are more committed to the result of what you are intending than you are to the way that it has to show up, if you are not attached to the way that it has to come to you, you can see whatever it is, and you can take the opportunity when it presents itself. If something is yours, it can't be taken away from you. So even in the moment when it looks like someone took it, if you are open to a solution and you are open to reframing the experience and calling it a blessing instead of a curse, if you are open to a healing, if you are open to being refunded or refinanced or whatever it is, right? If you are just open, if you are not a wall of grievances about what happened to you, then solutions can find you. If you are more committed to the possibility than you are to what seems to be the reality in front of you, you can open a pathway to something new to happen. You can't do that if you aren't willing to see the possibility. And you can't do that if you only live by interpreting the past. And that's what your whole life becomes. So I would encourage you to at least open this conversation for yourself. At least start to look at what's running you underneath everything. Because you can make all the lists that you want and say all the affirmations that you want and spend hours a day reading and watching videos and all of these. You can do all of these things, but if your daily behavior does not line up with that, it doesn't matter how much work. If you can't find the rotting fruit, it doesn't matter how much fresh food you put in that refrigerator. It's not going to stay fresh to its maximum ability. If I build a beautiful $10 million home on a rotten foundation, it's going to sink and it's going to be destroyed. It doesn't matter how much money I spent on that house. If I put the best quality and the finest things in it, if the foundation underneath me is rotting, if there's something in there that's not holding up, eventually, do you remember the building in Florida that just collapsed because the foundation was bad? Many people died. Okay, that was cutting corners. They didn't make a solid foundation in that apartment building and the whole thing collapsed. That's not supposed to happen. And it happened because someone cut corners and someone didn't do what they were supposed to. But the bottom line is the foundation wasn't solid. So the building collapsed. Somebody didn't build a foundation that meant something. Your job is to build. You are the leaders of your own lives. It's not anyone else's job to build a foundation on which you can strongly stand. That's your job. It's not my job. It's not Tracy's job. It's yours. It's not Tony Robbins' job. It's not. And all those guys are great, by the way. I'm not discounting any work that's out there to be done. What I'm saying to you is going to one seminar or 60 seminars and not doing the work on yourself daily. It doesn't matter if you spend $100,000 on your personal development. If you don't do the work on the daily, all that money is going to be for nothing. Because you have to do the work. There's no way not to do the work. Life is work. I have news. I'm famous for saying there's not an easy button for us to push and it all turns out. This isn't Staples. It doesn't work like that. You have to do the work, and you have to do it every day. And you have to bash your ego, and you have to understand your limitations for what they are in the moment so you can learn how to elevate past them and work with them. And stop being offended by everything, because that's not helping you either. If someone has something constructive to say, or even if it's not constructive, you can make it constructive. You can receive information and interpret it any way you want. If I call her a cheap honker and she chose to be offended, it could have ended our friendship. It could have. I mean, truthfully, she could have got super offended, left the house, demanded to be taken to the airport, and that could have been the end of it. If she was not willing to see She could have turned it into, who the hell do you think you are? And I've known you for 30 years, right? Because I've seen people do that. I've seen family members do that. I've seen friends do it. I've seen ex-husbands and wives do it to each other. You decide. It's your interpretation. If somebody calls you an aardvark and you don't think you are one, it's not going to bother you. If someone says that you're nasty or you're a complainer or you're egoic and you're not, it's not going to bother you. If someone says that you're egoic and it irritates you, there's probably something in there for you to look at. If someone says that you're overweight and it irritates you, then there's something for you to look at for what you think about yourself. Because you might weigh more than someone else, and you might be fine with that, and you might feel good about yourself, and that's perfect for you. It's whatever is yours. But if you don't feel good about yourself and you think that it shouldn't be like that, then if somebody says something, or if you're too thin, or you're too tall, or whatever the case may be, if you don't think something about that for yourself, if you don't have some conversation there that's not cleared up, it's not going to bother you at all. So if someone's highly offending you, it's probably something for you to look at, just FYI. It's probably something in there that either they're just like a quality that you hate in yourself, and so you need, I hate to say need, it'd be good to examine that. So, because if I encounter, and when I encounter someone that just rubs me the wrong way, I have to say to myself, all right, what is it? What is it that I don't? What is it about me? What is it about me that I see in that person that I don't, that I wish was different? And then I can work on that for me. Then I can shift that quality in myself. And every time I've done that, interestingly enough, the other person shifts. And I didn't say anything to them. I just shifted this. This is all you have control over right here. That's it. You don't have control over anything else. You don't have control over other people or circumstances or anything. Life is going to toss you interesting things. And I have news. When you start to want to elevate, life's going to be like, all right, you want to elevate? Let's see. Let's see. And it's going to start to throw you stuff that is meant to deter you. And if you're uncommitted to your own goals and objectives, you will be thwarted by that. And then, you won't go where you want to go. And every failure that you think you've had, that's just your interpretation. Emerson said there's no such thing as failure, right? There's only misunderstood experiences. It's only a failure if you label it as such. It's only a travesty if you say so. It's only a catastrophic event if you say so. Even if the whole world says, oh my God, that's catastrophic that happened to you, you get to choose. When I had the car incident that I had, if I had shared that with the world, everyone would have said, oh my God, okay? And there would, I could have got you can get a lot of agreement for that, right? Because people are they love that stuff. They want to oh, that happened to you? You almost died? Oh my God, my cousin almost died. My Uncle Joe almost died, okay? And then they want to tell you their story, and then they want to right? They want to they're okay? It doesn't have to be like that. You can be the one that declares it's something different. And if someone knows the circumstance, you can say, when Mom passed away and left this planet, people were calling and oh my, and I kept saying, no, it isn't like that. She chose, because she did. She chose. Her and I, for those of you that were at her memorial service, her and I had a conversation the morning before she passed away. She chose. Her and I had a conversation. She said, I see I could have a healing. It's too much trouble. I don't want to do it. I'm going to get out. Okay, cool. Then this is the path that we're going to take. And we got hospice involved in all of that, okay? So I wouldn't let people say to me how horrible it was. I wouldn't let them call it a travesty, a tragedy, a this, a that. I just wouldn't. And I just kept saying, and sometimes I wouldn't answer the phone, because I didn't want to have to spend the energy because it's difficult to get somebody to go a different direction with it. It's exhausting. So don't answer the phone. Do you. And that's what I did. And some people were offended that I didn't call them back and whatever, but it doesn't matter. It matters what I had to do with myself to move through that. It matters how I had to rearrange myself. I'm a trainer. I'm a teacher. I have a staff. I have a responsibility to be at my best and do my best at all times. That's what I believe my responsibility to be. So if I had gotten and taken in that all that travesty conversation and oh my God, if I had like invited it in for tea and had it sit down and had a scone and stayed in my pajamas and was like, oh, poor me, my mother died, now I have no one. And okay, I could have done that. I didn't. Number one, she wouldn't have wanted me to do that. And number two, it doesn't make any sense. Why? Why would I do that? The world is set up like that. The world is set up to like invest itself in your tragedy, you know? Not like they're happy about it, but like because then you're like them. Because most of the world is complaining and they're invested in their tragedies and their travesties, and because nobody wants to take responsibility that their life is not the way that they want it to be. There's nobody responsible for that but you. Nobody but you. So when you have something that seems like it's awful, everybody wants to get on that train. Everybody wants to, you know, join in the whole like, oh my God, right? Because then they feel, everybody wants to belong. They feel like they belong. They feel like they got some camaraderie with you. When you're in your life, like the beacon of light, like you're the one that's like leading the charge for changing yourself and changing the way that people think and all that, not so many people want to be around you. I have news, okay? Your trajectory, it's like this. It gets very small. And that's when you have people that have been around you for many, many decades because they saw you. They walked through it with you. These guys have seen me when I've had nothing. They've seen me when I've had everything. They've seen me then when I had nothing again. They know me. They know that I walk what I talk. They know that I practice every single day. So they get it. They know me. When someone just meets me now, they're like, oh, you're so, it's like, you don't know me. You don't know. You don't know what you don't know about anybody. When you are leading the charge for possibility in your life, you will lose a lot of people, you know, or you will have a lot of acquaintances, but not a lot of trusted companions. That's okay. Because you want the trusted companions that are holding you accountable. You want people close to you that are helping you to go forward. And so when you are changing the way that you are looking at things and when you're creating a new perspective for yourself and a new interpretation, your daily practice becomes not only necessary, but that's your lifeline. So I always recommend that people bookend, and in this workbook, there's lots of different things and questions, and then there's some tools to use, and then there's an opportunity for you to like write a new prescription for yourself for the new year and all of that. What I encourage is that you bookend your days, and I tell all my coaching clients this, like that this is from Darren Hardy's book, The Compound Effect, but you take, you know, at the beginning of the day, you take time to frame that, and then at the end of the day, you take time to frame it. So you frame it here, the way that you want it to be, then life happens in the middle, then you have the opportunity at the end to frame it up, package it up, and then you move on, okay? So when you frame and bookend your day like this, then whatever happens in the middle, you have some tools and strength to deal with it because you set your day up, and when something pops up, you have the opportunity at the end of the day to reframe it again, be at peace with it, be grateful for it, look at it. Life comes at us right now, especially at a very rapid pace with all of this pandemic conversation and all of this stuff that's out there. Like there's a lot of chatter and negativity and just like there's a lot out there right now, and there's a lot of people that don't know how to put their lives back together, and they have economic distress, and there's a lot going on out there. And most of you in this room are leaders of light in some way, shape, or form. I would really encourage you to see what you can do to be part of the solution out there and hold yourself to a higher standard, making sure that you have a practice on the daily where you can recreate yourself, because you will have to. You have to do it every day. And sometimes you'll have a bad day, and that's okay. It's not like, don't live in there though. Don't like put it on like a dress and dance around in it. Like have your bad day or have your bad 5 minutes or 1 hour or whatever. And you know, when you need to cry, cry. When you need to be angry, be angry. Just don't wallow. Don't sit in there like it's an event. Don't sit in it. Move through it. Move to the next thing. Get to the next highest thing. Try to raise yourself to the next highest thought that you can have, the next highest level that you can have. Because as you do that, you'll attract at that higher level, then you'll attract something, and then it will get easier. The biggest favor that you can do yourself is probably the 3 things, right? Figure out what it is that you want. Really, really think about that and really write that down for yourself. Then start digging into what's in the way is that real second question, and that's where all this interpretation comes from and the conversations underneath it, running everything and all of that. Because you're saying to yourself, this is what I want, and this is where I am. What's in my way? What's in the way of me going from here to there? What's in the way of that? What conversations, what people, is your house mess? Like, what circumstances around you are in the way of you getting from here to there? So you've got to do that linguistic surgery, and sometimes surgery on your surroundings, like emptying closets, cleaning counters, okay? Because just like dragging around these like attitudes and behaviors and feelings behind you, if you can't even get in your car because it's so filled with trash, I have news for you. The multimillionaire that you want to be, it's not happening. If you go home and you can't even get in the door because like there's so much junk, or you leave dirty dishes, okay? It's not happening. That's like the CEO that's like nice person at work and then goes out to a restaurant and treats the servers like shit. That's not happening. If you can't be authentic, if you are giving lip service to the life that you want to create, but then in your circumstances you're treating people unkindly, you're living in a mess, okay, you're not being authentic all the way down. Your attraction point is where you live. If you live in a pig pen, I have news. No matter how many affirmations you do, you're only going to be able to elevate to a certain point. What happens is if you don't change all this stuff, you do all these affirmations, that's great. You're creating all this positive energy. You're doing affirmations. Maybe you're doing an image board, a vision board. Maybe you're doing a prayer call, whatever you're doing. Maybe you're reading a book, going to a seminar. Perfect. You got all this stuff going on. Then you got all this old moldy stuff here, right? Now you're not going anywhere because all the positive is keeping the negative stuff from dragging you down further, but it's also, you see, I can't get anywhere. I can't get up. I won't go down because I'm like doing all the, and then people say, I'm doing all this work. I do all these affirmations. I spend all this money on all these seminars. It doesn't work. Okay. Show me anybody that says that they went and they did this, this, and this. Bring them to me and then have them tell me it doesn't work and let me ask them some questions. And I promise you, I will find out for you why it's not working. Or ask them the questions yourself. If they're in your, I've got some Arbonne ladies here, if they're in your downline and they're saying that they're not getting the results that they want and they don't understand why and they don't know what's happening, start asking them some questions. You'll get to the bottom of it. It lives in there. It's easy to give lip service to the life that you want. It is much more difficult to practice that on a daily basis and bring yourself along. It takes discipline, it takes commitment, and it takes a certain level of skill, and your skills will get polished. You'll develop more skill as you keep at it. So I would encourage you that if you want to create something different for 2022, that you first would ask yourself the question, what do I want? Really, what do I want? Not just like I want a new car and I want to make $50,000 more a year. No, what do you really want? Who do you want to be? What do you want your legacy to be? Who do you want to show up like? What do you want people to say about you when you leave the room? Who are you? What is your brand? You are a brand. How you show up in the world is a brand. Whether you don't have to own a business to be a brand, you are a brand. The way that you are says something about you. It tells people something about you. Your actions tell people who and what you are before you even open your mouth. They know. And when this is different than this, they know that too. So ask yourself the question, what do you want? Then ask yourself the question, what's in the way? Then go to what's under that, what's in the way. Like, what are the conversations? What's my space look like? What does my car look like? What does my bathroom look like? How do I dress? How do I show up? Does my suitcase have duct tape? Am I telling people I'm a coach and I'm a person that cleans up people's spaces and I'm a roll up in Vermont with my suitcase and digging things out of the garbage, all right? So, and by the way, Tracy gave me permission to say all that, so she's not surprised. But that just, it perfectly illustrates our point. It's like she says and does the work every day about who she wants to be, yet she was showing up in a different way, okay? So now she's bringing this, and see, so now they can go up together. How she shows up in the world, what she's telling herself, and all the prayer and positive work that she's doing, now we can go, now she's elevating and going up like this. But before, for many years, she's been like this. She's been doing all this great prayer work and positivity work, but then the rest of it's not matching up. So she's been like this. And that's why she was crying in August, saying, how come after X amount of decades, I'm still here? And then she allowed me to crack into that. So you have to be able to do the work in there. You have to go digging around. You have to look at the stuff you don't want to look at. And you don't have to tell anybody if you don't want to. We don't need to hear it. You need to hear it. You need to look at it. You need to figure it out. If you were in college and you were taking a particular path and it didn't turn out for you, and then you said something to yourself about that, and now now you might be almost 60 years old, and your whole, you know what I'm saying? It's been your whole thing. You don't know what you don't know. If you can't see it, you cannot move it out of your way. If you cannot language it to yourself, you cannot begin to fix it. So this isn't about, prancing out of here and thinking like, oh, cool, everything's different. No, this was a gift. My gift to you is, here's the work to do. Here's an opportunity for you to do the work. Here is an opportunity. Here's some gloves, and here's a bleach spray. Now go home and get after it. Because I could tell you a million things, and they might make a difference for you in the moment. But if you go home and you don't do any work, it doesn't matter what I bought you lunch for nothing, because ain't nothing going to happen. Okay? You have to be willing to do the work. You have to be willing to dig in. And then, so what do you want? What's in the way? Dig in, and then get a practice. There's some suggestions in there for some tools. Some of you know tools. Some of you don't use them. I've taken on some of you as clients that were clients of another lady that's related to me that is no longer here. And when I asked, what is your daily practice? The answer was, I would say 3 affirmations. What? What else do you do? Nothing. What do you mean nothing? Nothing. Where's your your image board, your image book? Where's your this? Where's your that? I don't do that. I mean, I did that back when, Tony did this with me, or I did that back when it's like, what did you think? It stopped? Did you think you don't have to do any more work? Did you think that the tools that you got taught, or other tools that you picked up along the way, you know what I'm saying? Did you think that the tools that you've learned in the work of your personal development, did you think that it just doesn't work anymore? Let me ask you, if you learn how to use a screwdriver in your house and it takes out a screw, and then 10 years later, right, because a screwdriver is a tool, and then 10 years later you go and you need, okay, but then you're trying to use a pencil or an orange, that's not the right tool, and you're not going to get the screw out without a tool. You're not going to change the trajectory of your circumstances without using tools. It might be sad news for some of you. That's okay. But if your life is not the way that you want it to be, if your life seemed better way back when and it doesn't seem like that now, I have news. You're not practicing. You're fooling yourself. And if you think you're going to go out there and teach other people or lead other people and you don't have a practice that you do every single day, your teaching is not going to hold up. It is not. I don't care who you are. It's not going to hold up. So if you are a leader, a manager, an entrepreneur, and if it's not going the way that you want, and you're trying to coach and lead people and show them, and it isn't working, it's because you are not practicing your own. You are not living an authentic life. You cannot teach someone what you are not willing to do. You cannot. And in truth, this is why my mother ended up where she did, because she stopped practicing. She just kept going down a road that was well-worn to her, and it got to be too much. And we had a lot of conversations about that.
Can I share a tool before you
Please?
close?
Yep.
So there's all kinds of tools, as she said, and some of you probably have something going on a daily, and it's really important to stay engaged, and if you can have an accountability partner that's willing to go there with you, that's probably, to me personally, that's made the most difference in my life. But right now, myself and 2 friends are checking in every morning with 4 goals that we're going to accomplish in the day, and then report at the end of the day that we are complete with the goals. And if we don't, we pay $100.
A person.
Both persons, $100 for each that we do.
We play at a larger level, but we recommend an accountability partner is where we're going. You don't have to pay each other. You could buy each other a coffee or something.
Want,
I mean,
for me,
yeah.
To go to the level of keeping my word with myself and challenging myself and calling myself at a higher level, and some of the goals I choose, I'm like, ooh, I don't think I'm going to put that one on there. I go, oh, well, guess what? That's going on there.
Yeah.
Because I got to stretch, I got to push, I move it. Like if I want something to happen, if I say I'm getting up at 5 a.m. to go to the gym, well, guess what? You're getting up at 5 a.m. to go to the gym. I don't care what you feel like.
Or Rodney and I are $200 richer.
Yeah, I didn't.
Play for more than you can afford to lose if you want to do something like that. Because if it's $5 and $5 is no big deal to you, I have news. Nothing's going to get done. So we had to set it so that it would be uncomfortable, so that like if we didn't do it, like that's enough of a hit, a couple $100. It's like, is it worth it? Not really. So anyway, tools, so important. Practice, so important. We're going to do another event in March. That one's called How to Develop Your Blueprint for Success. Steve Lentini's going to join me for that one. He's going to be a guest of ours. He's a leadership trainer as well. So that's great for all of you. Plus, if you have entrepreneurs and if you have people that are really looking for like a plan, we're going to kind of walk through some steps of how to kind of map out where you want to get to. I went a little deeper in the conversations in this room because I know all of you and I knew that I could. When we talk to the general public, it'll be a little lighter in touch, maybe, than it was today. Depends. But these are suitable events for, anybody that's never done anything really. So we try to make it, I always equate like to the lady in the laundromat. We try to break it down so that, anybody can understand and at least get something out of it. Our goal here is to just give you an opening to start a different conversation with yourself and give you enough information so that you can start digging around in your life to see what isn't working. Thank you all for joining us, and that's it. Happy holidays.
My biggest takeaway was the daily, getting the daily done and knowing what you're going to do at the beginning of the day and see where you are at the end of the day.
Sharing all of these amazing steps and giving us the information of what it's like to not want to drag everything with us into the next future, or myself.
But the difference is actually doing it, because if you do it, you will get it. If you don't do it, you can't really rest on your laurels and expect things to be different.
I don't think it's about perfection, it's about progress.
To reaffirm that I have to have a practice.
Noelle did a fabulous job. I'm grateful for her accumulation of knowledge in this field of transformation.
It's a daily, consistent effort.
So thank you, Noelle, and thank you to your mother and your ancestors and your teachers.